Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hi, my name is Vivian Acquah, and I'm an inclusion strategist, also the host of Let's Humanize the Workplace, where I interview different people all over the world about how to humanize the workplace. My guest speaker will be showing up, but in the meantime, I'll make the proper introduction. So please connect with me on LinkedIn if you haven't connected with me yet. I am really excited about today. But first, let me talk a little bit about myself. So, I'm an inclusion strategist, but also a certified CQ facilitator. And if you haven't read anything about cultural intelligence or what I've been sharing, please connect with me on LinkedIn or look upon LinkedIn. I've written a lot of things regarding cultural intelligence and how this can be a game changer. And throughout my search of learning more regarding cultural intelligence, which I will refer to CQ because it's a whole mouthful if you need to say cultural intelligence all the time, right? So from now on, I will say CQ because saying that a couple of times, after that, it's just like a whole mouthful. But I was reading through the material that I have from cultural intelligence, but also reading through, okay, now that I know the information that I have, what can I do to implement it better? And I came through Lucy Butter's book, which is Cultural Intelligence in Practice. And let me introduce Lucy properly because this is about putting CQ in action, creating a recipe for success, and not only a recipe for success for individuals, but also for teams, for leaders to activate their CQ muscle, not just with a one time. I call them the one night stand training where you do things once and think that everything magically happens. I mean, if you would go to the gym and just from just one training or one exercise, you will have your muscles and you will get leaner and healthier. I mean, everybody would want that, but it takes time to develop your CQ muscles and it takes time to learn a skill. So I am really excited about having this conversation with Lucy, but let me properly introduce her. So, Lucy is a master facilitator in CQ. She's 1 out of the 10 in the world, and she's also the author of Cultural Intelligence in Practice. And Lucy founded her company, LMB Limited, in 2010 and has been providing training which supports leaders, inclusion, but also international work. And she is a happy mom of triplet sons. Lucy, we have been doing a prep talk, prep conversation, and I'm curious, how are you?
I am well. I'm feeling good this week. Thank you very much, Vivian, and delighted to be here with you.
Excited, excited. So, given the theme of the show called Let's Humanize the Workplace, what is your definition of humanizing the workplace?
For me, it's about creating places where we not just thrive, but can be
Mm,
proud that what we're doing and contributing to, there's that sense. And you use the word, practice in the title of my book, Cultural Intelligence and Practice. When it's
mhm,
about people, we
yeah.
are not just task fulfillers. And I think sometimes in workplaces, that's how people are viewed. Have you done this? But the how have you done it is sometimes ignored. Have you managed to annoy a dozen customers in the process or your teammates or whatever? So how we do things is as important as have you done them?
Okay, there is something that I need to share because sometimes when I bring up this card or I bring up a card, it feels like it needs to be repeated, for the people who are in the back, because not everybody can understand what you're saying. So, can you please repeat what you are sharing regarding what I read from you was we are not robots, we are human. Treat us as such, treat us with respect, treat us that we have a mission, we have a purpose, and there is a reason why we align with the company's goal or the company's mission. Is that in a way, how I translated what you just said right now?
I'd say definitely we're not just robots,
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah.
Whether you align with your company's mission is in some ways up to you and the
Hmm.
company, but you will be contributing
Mm.
into wherever you are.
Yeah.
And I do, one of the companies I've worked with for quite a while, when they told me they started shifting just from saying in review meetings, have you got that done? Have you achieved
Hmm.
it? And
Yeah.
started more in that, how are you doing this? I thought,
Hmm.
yes, that felt like a really good point because all of us do better and contribute better. Not necessarily in every minute of every day, but in terms of
Yeah.
contribution, when people recognize us, whatever
Yeah.
that means for us.
So what I've seen some of my clients do is instead of doing a daily checkup, do a weekly check-in with each other. So where are you at? What is it that you want help with? But also check in with each other, like where are you? How can you improve? And how can this be better? Instead of micromanaging every task that somebody needs to do, right? And in the end, you're a leader. So why should you spend your time micromanaging somebody if they are hired or if they can do the job for what they are hired for, right?
Yeah, and I've been very lucky in my careers. I don't think I've ever been micromanaged.
Mm.
And it's been that kind of you've got things to achieve,
Mhm.
and that's the management perspective. Is this happening or not?
Yeah.
And so I've been in academia, I've been in the British Council, I now work for myself, nobody's checking up on me, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. But yes, that bit, some people, and again, it's that navigating, some people like to be checked and just have a sense of, is this going right or not? And
Yeah.
that might vary depending on what stages they're at. So I
Mhm.
wouldn't say definitely do this or don't do that.
Mhm.
I would say see what works with the
Yeah.
people that you have and observe yourself. When do you find it hard, not just to check up on what Vivian's
Mhm.
going to be doing? And how do you, because I think a big part is the self awareness piece about when you feel that rub inside about I should know more than I do at this moment in time. And you've
Mhm.
got to build your sense of trust in yourself and with each of your
Yeah.
colleagues that you're working with.
I see a question coming in from Sander. So Sander, welcome for joining in the show. And this conversation, it's about the people working in the company, but also about the company culture. Not sure if we are going to tap into the vision because this cultural intelligence is more focused on people, on teams, on leaders, and that will form in itself the culture of the company, right? Not itself, but when people have a trained CQ muscle, that's also an inclusive workplace that they can create with each other, which can contribute to a positive workplace, right?
Yeah, and I'd maybe add with Sander to have a vision that doesn't include your people
Mm-hmm.
would be
Yeah.
so what do you want for your people? Absolutely. If
Yeah.
you can
True.
articulate that into vision,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that you're moving towards? Brilliant.
Definitely. Definitely. So, an unusual question, but it's part of my routine. Every time that I work, I need to have music on, whilst my partner, my husband, he hates it when working with music. So we already clash. I know that I could never work with him. He already knows that about me, but I need music. I need to listen to R&B. And last week I was reminiscing on Bad Bunny, what an epic performance he provided as well. I also wrote about something about it on LinkedIn, but I'm curious, Lucy, what is your favorite music? What energizes you while working?
While I'm working, I'm probably more like your husband, Vivian.
Ooh.
I have realized that doing more than one thing at a time. So when I first started working for myself, I used to have radio on and music, and I
Hmm.
don't do things. If I'm listening, that's absorbing my energy.
Yeah.
So for me, music is very much, oh, I finished working. So like when I go to
Okay.
the kitchen and cook, I like to cook and have music on, or
Hmm.
sitting. I've got into sitting and reading with music on in the background, and it
Okay.
can be hugely eclectic what I listen to.
Hmm.
Um, but when I'm working, I like the idea. I've heard about people who say they listen to music before they go into a training space. And I
Hmm.
like that idea. I find I've always got quite high adrenaline before I
Mm.
go into I'm always excited about who's going to be in the room, what it's going to be
Exactly.
like. You don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, music has not been part of my working life, I'm afraid.
Okay. 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 And that can also be something, right? It doesn't have to be that you have a music, but I recognize that. I recognize the adrenaline before going into a session and you feeling excited about what's going to happen. And then at the end, I do feel less energetic than the way I started because it's hard work. It's a mental workout that you're doing. And I don't know how is that with you when you end your session?
Can be very different.
Mhm.
And you'll know that yourself.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
sessions where there's lots going on and you have to really focus and always have that
Mhm.
sense of be careful because you're holding people in your hands through it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's an easier session or process with some groups than with others. So it can very much depend.
Yeah.
On
I
the
get
whole, though, I feel always reflective, that
that.
kind of,
Mhm.
that I'm always kind of going over what went well, what could I do again, what might I've done differently. So these kind of things are with me. But yeah, I love the work I do. I love doing it with just being with people in that sort of development
Exactly.
space. Yeah.
Exactly. When I first started with the chapters of your book, I realized there were a lot of personal anecdotes throughout your book. So I needed to ask this following question. How did your personal journey and experience influence you writing cultural intelligence in practice?
And again, I'm quite old. I'm 56. There's a lot of
Mhm.
experience having gone on in these decades. But I
Mhm.
think three things. So one was that at the moment of time in 2023, I was part of a CQ Fellows program with Dr. David Livermore to get us thinking about how we're using and sharing cultural intelligence in the world. And
Mhm.
through that process, I began to think, well, I'm a trainer. I want to engage and speak with other trainers and coaches. That's my domain, if you like. And that was when the idea to write the book came together. So I have never I've harbored the desire, the ambition to author a book. That's not been, I've heard an awful lot of people say, I've always wanted to write a book. I was not that person. So that's a very specific experience. Earlier in my career, I worked with the British Council, and it's like soft diplomacy for the United Kingdom. And anytime you did something, you would think, who can my partners be? You didn't go out and do things on your own as just a British Council project typically. It was nearly always you were trying to build partnerships. And I think that has really influenced how I look out at the world. That bit about I want to collaborate with people. I wanted other voices, the interviewees that I brought in. And so I think that has been quite a foundational experience in some ways in my way to work, in my way I work. But going back, I love one of the things I've heard a lot is, people like the stories about my dad or something, and it's
Mhm.
very brief. I am aware that I come from a home where looking out and being curious was part of the norm. And my father was a minister, so we met many people, everyone,
Mhm.
would come in. There's no sense of barrier around that. I remember my dad saying you always had to look out with love and respect. And I always kind of hold that as that kind of mantra about, okay, if I'm going to love and respect you, I've got to take you from where you are. This is where
Mhm.
we are. So that was very much. And at one point, I also worked with trainers in Jordan, and it was a program in Jordan at the time. I remember one of the trainers who I thought was fantastic, and she always said you've got to be prepared to be vulnerable when you're training.
Yeah.
And she didn't mean in that way of gushing out stories, which I often hear people do. It's about
Mhm.
what's the purpose of this. So I do share stories, but with the what's the learning of this,
Mhm.
so that
Definitely.
people get a sense of who I am, because I do believe you've got to share something of yourself in order to connect.
Yeah. I recognize that as a trainer or as a facilitator when I talk about myself or include stories with my son or include stories of other people, that it's a way to boost trust. It's also a way to create that connection that is needed oftentimes in these sessions. And it's also about, I wouldn't say vulnerability, it's about making things personal, because even
Mhm.
though it is a professional training, you're still bringing in your personal self in these sessions where you might share something about, your upbringing, or you might share something about the way you prefer to work as in somebody else, or which is different than maybe if you were born and raised in Africa. I have Ghanaian roots, born and raised here in the Netherlands, and I realized that I sometimes have the tendency to bring the best of both. So I'm in
Mhm.
certain occasions I'm in the middle, which for me makes more sense now that I have done the cultural intelligence assessments than in the past. I was just like, yeah, but I'm Ghanaian, so I will bring in my community self. No, I'm Ghanaian. I'm born and raised in the Netherlands, so I'll bring in my individual self in this aspect. So yes, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned this in a previous question, but still, I'm going to ask this because what motivated you to interview the different experts from all around the world, and how did their insights shape the final content?
Yeah, so there was a bit I said about I'm always aware I am just, all of us are just one
Mhm.
person.
Yeah,
All of us are but an anecdote, that
yeah.
kind of thing. So I was very keen when I thought I want to speak to other trainers who do work in these
Mhm,
multicultural, diverse spaces. I wanted to speak to others who did that.
mhm.
It would be richer. Also, I'm going to confess, I knew that if I interviewed people and told them I was writing a book, that would motivate me to write the book. I would, once once I've promised people I'm going to do something,
Yeah.
that was really important because I didn't know all of these people. I knew some of them, but I didn't know.
Mhm,
And when I thought, who do I want to interview? I wanted people from around the world, different
mhm.
contexts, different places that we worked in. And I wrote out to a dozen people, thinking maybe six would say yes. Everyone
All
said
of them
yes.
said yes.
All of them said yes. So I instantly had more work. But it was also very apparent to me that these people gave me time and also gave me trust. I mean, I have
Mhm.
no reputation as an author. I've never authored anything before. So they
Yeah.
were really putting faith in me. And I really appreciated that. And that helped the motivation to make sure I've got
Well, I do
information
I do
as
have
well.
to I do have to give you credit. You have done this work for a long time. And I don't think that those who signed up to become one of your guest speakers or one of the interviewees, that they have never heard of you. So I think that it's the work that you put out there, but also the fact that you're you and you're putting a different lens on cultural intelligence that can help them. It helps me as an individual, but it also helps other people to understand and marinate on this concept, because sometimes people, I used to confuse cultural intelligence with cultural awareness. Now I know better, right? And I definitely know better where you have all these different elements that contribute in a way to cultural awareness, but it goes beyond, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than the individual self when working on cultural intelligence. Is also bigger than a team working on cultural intelligence, and it's also beneficial for so many companies out there. So um, you have to give yourself more credit. That's all I wanted to
I
say.
have the credit. I have the credit, but it was a kind of, that kind of sense of everyone saying yes. But you're absolutely right. I have a lot of
Mhm.
experience, and I hope that that comes through. So it was
Mhm.
about amplifying and enriching
Yeah.
everything that's in. And I hope
Mhm.
one of the things that you hear as well is that voice that says cultural awareness. So you're aware. So what? Now
Yeah,
what?
exactly.
And I really want
Exactly.
people to be more ambitious.
Yeah.
And awareness is about the knowledge aspect, which is
Mhm.
important. However, I think if you've only got knowledge, you're more likely potentially to stereotype and think, oh, Ghana, yeah, I know what to expect from somebody from Ghana, and Ghana's millions. I
We
don't know
have
what to
gazillion
expect from people
tribes
in
in
my own.
Ghana.
I
Yeah.
don't know what to expect from people in my own street, let
Yeah.
alone, it's kind of, and so I think cultural intelligence just helps it deepen it, and it's
Mhm.
based on really solid research,
Yeah.
which has been
Yeah.
going on around the world, which I
Yeah.
love about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I notice I'm only seeing LinkedIn user, and I see a long, long text. I will share just a snippet of the text. Love this. This is CQ in action, and cultural intelligence is not static. It's a muscle that we need to intentionally build. It requires CQ drive, CQ knowledge, CQ strategy, and CQ action. So all these are pillars, four pillars that are the foundation of cultural intelligence. And within every pillar, there are mini pillars that you can work on to tweak and to build your muscles so that you can collaborate better. For me, knowing your cultural intelligence and where you can tweak and change and become better is knowing how to collaborate better with other people that are on the opposite, and how you can meet each other in the middle, but also how you can effectively communicate. I am now in a stage where I wish I had known this early in my career. I wish that many teams had it, because it would demystify um, so many irrelevant conflict that should not have been a conflict, but ended as a conflict because there was so much in the undercurrent. We were mislabeling people from a different aspect.
Mhm.
There's so much to learn about this, and it should be a foundation when building a team or when improving your team as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I like that, the muscle. And can
Hmm.
I tell you, Vivian, when you said if you could
Hmm.
just go to the gym once and then that's
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
you're super sleek and muscled, that would be absolutely fantastic. But
Definitely.
absolutely, that practice in the title is,
Hmm.
it's not an abstract concept.
Yeah.
It is something real, but also we need to keep building the habit, that
Yeah.
muscle, that practice. Absolutely.
Definitely. Definitely. So CQ, I've been trying to demystify it, trying to write about it. I've even analyzed Emily in Paris and Ted Lasso with the CQ lens, and people are trying to connect with it, but it can be complex for those who don't know it yet. So I'm curious about how did you challenge, what challenges did you face when translating complex CQ items or concepts into accessible guides for trainers?
I think often we can, as trainers and who
Mhm.
know cultural intelligence, you can want to share too much.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
actually is one of the things that was good about writing a book, because you can put in an awful lot of information. I'm loving that card. That's the third time I now feel I'm gonna leave this with my arms in the air. But we can often want to overcomplicate, and we want
yeah.
people to understand. The understanding is less relevant. We do
Mm-hmm.
get to a place of better behaviors.
Yeah.
And, so the concept, and sometimes I'll not really mention cultural intelligence because it's
Mm-hmm.
not, but I'm using that approach
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes, if you like, that kind of, but what's your
Yeah.
motivation here and what do we
Yeah.
know and how can we use that? Not who have we not spoken to yet? So you're not
Mm-hmm.
mentioning
Yeah.
CQ, but you're working with the framework. And
So
with
you're
those,
doing CQ in stealth mode.
with I would say with purpose mode, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing. It has
Mm-hmm.
to become part of life, not something that's separate.
Yeah.
So, and so how can, and often it's like getting the challenges right at the beginning, or even an exercise I sometimes do, which I do share in the book, is just folding your arms, Vivian. I don't know if you can
Mm.
fold your arms for me and then refold them, tucking them the other way. If anybody's in the listening
Yeah.
can do that. And people go that that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's the feel, you can do something like that in 2 minutes, and people
Mm-hmm.
suddenly grasp that, oh yeah, when I'm up against something that's not my norm, it's uncomfortable. Because often people think, if I know what to do, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But when we're working with people, we need to be prepared to feel discomfort sometimes
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
I
kind of
agree.
lean into it. So the little things like that, it's the, and kind of keeping that vision about what will make things better when we can
Mm-hmm.
interact and achieve things better together.
For me, it reminds me of the word empathy, of, feeling that discomfort, knowing that your comfort zone or your space of comfort might feel discomfortable for somebody else. And if you stand in somebody else's shoes to walk a mile a little bit, to, walk just for a few minutes or just for maybe a half a day, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes to understand their perspective, because your perspective is not always the best perspective. But when we meet each other in the middle and exchange those different perspectives, we learn to respect each other, understand each other, and be open for, okay, how can we create a pathway that is good for me, good for you, good for everybody within the team as well? I'm seeing the comments exploding. So Sander is saying totally agree about the muscle. As an executive chef, it should be a standard in hospitality. Well, Sander, let's make it happen. Cultural intelligence should be a standard in hospitality, and
I
also
think in hospitality, you really are responding to the world, and both in
exactly,
terms of who works within and who
yeah,
you're welcoming as
yeah.
well. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it reminds me not only when it comes to hospitality, as in, serving a client, but also in the caregiving space, right? So the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, those who are midwives. Sometimes there is a misunderstanding there, and there's so much there here. And Samar, okay, Lucy, the book made it to Abu Dhabi, girl. Can't wait for the work high season. Slow down to devour it and host you for a discussion. For now, thanks, ladies, for this culture dose. Thank you, Samar, for sharing that. I'm
Well,
really
that's
excited.
lovely. That's made me
Really
happy,
excited.
Tamara. Thank you.
Really excited about this. Okay, let's go to the next question. How do you address the potential cultural biases that may arise in training sessions as discussed in your book? So, in the beginning, I mentioned something about me being born and raised in the Netherlands, but having Ghanaian roots. Is there something that you can do? An example that you can combine with that?
I would say every training space has a
Mhm.
multitude of different things
Yeah.
and people's experiences. And I think that's the thing. And I think at the beginning, it's always useful to think about what the behaviors are going to look like
Hmm.
in with this group of people. You know,
Yeah.
what's that
So
going
you're
to
applying your CQ strategy. That's
so
what you're
what's
doing.
going on? Absolutely, but also getting people to contribute.
Hmm.
So, you know, you mentioned earlier about you might mention something of, you know, this aspect of the Netherlands or this
Yeah.
aspect of the Ghana. But in some ways, all of those aspects are Vivian.
Mhm.
So where they've
Yeah.
come from is maybe less relevant
Hmm.
in some ways, not
Hmm.
less
I
relevant
get
to
what you're
you.
saying.
You
Yeah.
know, and everybody has these different things, and you come across bias all the time. So one I
Hmm.
hear frequently, you mentioned empathy. I'm quite often asking, really, do women really have more empathy? Because I
Yeah.
hear that on repeat, and
Yeah.
it's almost like this:
Yeah.
look at women, aren't we better? Look at
Yeah.
our empathy.
Yeah.
But if you look at the research, it implies quite possibly not. It's very
Hmm.
mixed. And actually, it shows that if men are involved in tasks that they know are about empathy, they do less well than if
Hmm.
they don't know what it's about. And that's that element. And so for me, I think bias can show up unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And it's about
Especially when
acknowledging
you're
that.
tired, especially when you're low in your energy, especially at the end of the day when you have a busy day. Yeah.
Sometimes, and also just in life. So, for
Yeah.
example, I'm from the northeast of Scotland. I live in
Hmm.
Glasgow, which is quite a sectarian city, which is
Hmm.
manifested in its football teams. And I've
Mm.
always thought people ask you questions and they're really asking, what team do you support or what
Hmm.
side of this sectarian divide are they on? Even when they're asking what school you went to or things like that, you
Hmm.
know? And it's, I always thought nothing to do with me because I'm not from Glasgow. I'm from the northeast of Scotland and I don't have a view on it. I'm quite
Hmm.
open minded. You can be anywhere. When my sons started to play for a team that was very clearly affiliated to one of those football teams, I
Yeah.
realized, oh, actually, I do have you know, so I'd never had to face it before. And I had to really work through what they were getting in terms of their footballing and things like that. So
Hmm.
things can come out of the blue that we think, well, I don't have any, you know, I'm very open minded about this. And that really surprised me in that particular instance.
Hmm.
So I think there's lots of different things like that. And it's about recognizing that we are all human. Assumption, bias, we're full of it, and they will keep changing because the context around us and the media and the stories that they are telling all the time, they are bouncing off of us. Is, you know, we're not
Yeah.
impermeable, so things impact. And I think it's just useful. And when you talk about in the training space, I think my chapter about questions and listening, you've got to take that kind of, what is it you're trying to say there?
Hmm.
What
Definitely.
impact,
And
what
also,
impact are you hoping to have? So that I guess is how I would maybe respond to that question.
what I always try to say when talking about unconscious biases or when I'm adding unconscious bias in the training, that everybody who has a brain is biased.
Of course.
So that also means that I'm not excluded from being biased. I mean, I have my moments where I disclose with my inner circle of friends, like, okay, now Vivian, the inclusion strategist, is being deactivated. I'm sharing things that my mind is processing. Please don't judge me, but I'm sharing it in a limited circle because I know how they will be responding, but also I'm sharing it because I want to bounce off ideas, or I want to bounce off things to make sure that I'm challenging myself, to make sure that I'm mitigating my unconscious biases. If we don't create those spaces where we can share things from a place where somebody will critique me, critique me as in giving me the feedback the way that I hope that they are going to provide me the feedback instead of the butchery way. We need to have those spaces as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there are some things that are never okay, or
Mm-hmm.
it would be fleetingly small that you can think of
Yeah.
things. But actually, that bit about processing based on our yesterdays and our experience of the world, it's
Mm-hmm.
having to change because of this
Yeah.
new information. And that's part of, I think, being open. And we had this wonderful conversation when we were talking about this, about often it's not the question, it's the reaction to the question. When
Mm-hmm.
people tell you something about themselves, and there's so much about each of us
Yeah.
that's hidden and it's going to come out in conversation or at different points
True.
of a journey. And sometimes people react as though they should have known something in
Yeah.
advance. And I think there's something there about accepting ourselves and others as we unfold.
True. I also believe that sometimes people don't disclose certain elements about themselves because it's not always easy to
Mhm.
show up in a vulnerable way. But and yeah, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but I like, what I like about CQ, it's not asking me for me to share my vulnerability, but it is demystifying my unique ingredients. How do I work? How do I collaborate without me sharing or oversharing vulnerable elements of myself through questions where I don't, questions that I don't perceive as okay, but now I'm sharing too much or I'm getting too personal.
Mhm.
These are questions that a normal human being could also ask me without me tapping into my vulnerability. And to have the outcome that I have right now, which in a way I thought I knew myself, but then when I got the assessment, then I'm just like, oh, but there is so much to me. It's like the Transformer quote that there's more to me that meets the eye. And that's literally the case. Yeah.
Always more to everyone than meets the
Yeah.
eye.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Coming back to your book, because um, there is a lot happening in the world right now. AI is taking over. How are people going to handle this? So, how do you envision a future of CQ training, especially with the integration of AI?
Again, I think there's going to be lots of different things. I was very fascinated about you saying that you use virtual reality sometimes in
Mm-hmm.
your
Yeah.
training, and that's a fantastic application. I also think at the total other extreme, there may be trainers who say, I care about the planet and the water and the
Mm-hmm.
energy usage, and I don't
Yeah.
use AI at all. And that might become a selling point with certain
Mm-hmm.
organizations. So I think there's a whole spectrum of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think AI will increase the need for people to have cultural intelligence.
Yeah.
That bit around how are we prompting, if we're using generative AI, for example, what are we asking? How are we prompting? The thing about AI is it always sounds confident, even
Mm-hmm.
if in 30 seconds later it goes, oh, you're right, I didn't consider that research, or
Yeah.
whatever the responses are, but it always sounds confident. So
Yeah,
that really requires us to be thinking, what am I not hearing or seeing or doing? So
exactly.
I think there's lots of opportunity still. I know that there's people, like coaching bots now, so you'll not need a human coach.
I
But there
disagree.
will always
Let
be
me,
people who want to engage with other. I agree. I think, I don't think
yeah.
I spend enough time at a screen. I want to see a human
Mhm.
when I'm in there.
I wrote one article for the Cultural Intelligence Center, but also on my profile on LinkedIn. I wrote an article about how CQ can be a game changer in the light of AI, and I'm using also the example of a football coach. Hypothetically, this is a real case which happened for football club Sochi, where it's a Russian football club where they found out that the football coach was heavily using AI for planning abroad football matches, but also hiring a new hire. And this person relied heavily on AI, whereas I use that case as a challenge. Okay, but as a leader, when you put AI into the front, instead of you driving the bus, AI is driving the bus, then how will you know that AI is riding the right journey for you? How
Mm.
will you know if you're hiring? So if you are not allowing sleep within their day schedule, this football coach did that, and that's how they found out that this person was heavily relying on AI, then we are doomed. We are doomed because we are not allowing our human finesse. If somebody says yes and AI captures that as a yes, but not reading our body language, like, okay, but that yes, you gave me the poker face. What does that yes mean? Because that yes in different continents or different countries don't always mean a yes, right?
Absolutely.
Or when you're saying let's leave now, I mean the term now is differently defined in Europe than when I say let's say the whole continent of Africa. When they say now, they have different ranges of now. There's a now where you say now but you laugh, and there is a now like you look now we're leaving, right? So all these finesse is something that AI cannot capture, which is really valuable when you are negotiating or when you are talking to somebody who has a different lived experience or grew up somewhere else.
Absolutely. What you're saying. And also, I was what you said about who the leader, who's driving
Mhm,
the bus kind of thing. I have been surprised how many people have asked me if I use AI to write the book. I,
mhm,
I had signed with my publisher, so I wouldn't, and I did,
mhm,
it transcribed my interviews for me, which was
mhm.
great. But really interestingly, my Scottish accent in CQ wasn't picked up as CQ once, I don't think. More like
Exactly.
it was more like
Exactly.
see you, and it sounds a bit threatening in a Scottish
Yeah.
accent. But what I feel as well is that if you give away your thinking, so I think
Mm,
there's lots that AI can help with,
yeah.
but it you want to, as you say, you want to do the thinking. I was involved in a conversation over a couple of days with an organization that was using AI all the time. And I came away after 2 days. I mean, it was great. It was coming out and responding to, but at no point did I think. And when I came away, I suddenly thought, I don't really remember anything that we were talking about or agreeing, or because it had all been done by another machine. And
Mhm.
so there's
Yeah.
something about what do you want to hold on to? As you said,
Mhm.
who do you want to drive the buses? That'll
Yeah.
be AI
It
soon
should
as
be
well,
meant
apart
as a
from Vivian. But
co-pilot
yeah,
with no funding from Microsoft. It's meant as a co-pilot,
yeah.
a co driver, a co-assistant. That's how you should see AI. And the moment that we erase our critical thinking, start using AI the way that we use Google search, because that's also a challenge that I have with my 12-year-old, that when he Googles, he thinks that, okay, but that's a fact, right? No, it's not the way that we use encyclopedia in the past, where those things were fact checked, those things were real, right?
However, I'm just going to recommend that you do read the Dictionary of Lost Words, because it's
Ooh.
fascinating, because then it talks about who decides what goes into the encyclopedia, which facts are shares and which
Mm.
aren't. So actually, there's always been that going on.
Okay.
It was a novel, and it was
Yeah.
fascinating, and it's one of my recommendations because it's who
Mm-hmm.
decides, and there's always been gatekeepers.
Yeah.
There's still gatekeepers. They're
Yeah.
coming at us maybe more in terms of all
Mhm.
different elements of our life. And I wouldn't say you should or you shouldn't. I'd say where is it assisting you, where isn't, and what would be the benefits of using or not using?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's costs, and I don't think
Mhm.
we're fully aware of even the questions about what the costs are going to be yet.
Regarding the cost, and I think that I will do a conversation with in the upcoming episode in 2 weeks with Mary Jane Roy, is there has been research that using AI, heavily using AI, also leads up to a burnout.
Yeah, and we can go back. It's like my husband's an academic, and he's forever
Hmm.
telling students there's now research upon research that you'll remember better if you take written notes, but
Mm.
you cannot encourage
Yeah.
people to take
No.
written notes anymore.
No.
So it's that, like, there's research, and there's also, and that also talks to the norms around us. So we want to be seen doing what other people are doing, and
Hmm.
that's always a big driver, I think. Also, I don't want to be the person that sits and says, well, I never use AI, when everybody is. And there's an element of that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's an
Definitely.
opportunity to always be using our cultural intelligences also.
Definitely, definitely. I see some comments in the chat, so let me bring some comments up. Sander, thank you for sharing. So, if bias shapes how we judge, how we see before we judge, which CQ practices can help leaders separate perception, cultural meaning, skills, especially under pressure? I would say do the CQ assessment test, where you can individually work on one of the individual CQ elements. So it could be CQ drive, CQ strategy, CQ action, and CQ, I'm forgetting one.
Action? Did you say action?
I said
Strategy?
action, strategy, knowledge,
Knowledge?
CQ
Knowledge.
knowledge, CQ knowledge.
And what I would say is, when you're under pressure,
Mm-hmm.
practice when you're not under pressure, but practice, it could be something as simple as pressing fingers together. It's something
Mm.
that takes a pause for you. You're
Yeah,
pushing your toes into the ground, taking a deep breath, something that just pauses so that you have a pause before the reaction. And
yeah,
that is especially needed when we're under stress. So,
yeah.
and that bit of just calming ourselves. And when you talked about the perception, things you can do when you've got time is think, okay, who are we not hearing from? So if
Mm-hmm.
you think about, okay, so I've heard from this team, but maybe I work with 3 teams in
Yeah.
my space. Who am I not hearing from? Am I getting the client perspective anywhere at all?
Mhm.
And you might not have the answers to that, but just taking the moment to think, oh, but we've not heard, can just enable you to take a pause and think, actually, there's more to come before we make a decision, or we're going to make this decision, but know that it might have these different consequences. Therefore, we can put planning in place for that from the get-go as well.
Definitely. And also, when you are asking those questions or want to have a conversation with a different individuals that you haven't heard, please do that in a one-on-one. don't do that within the team at the time, because they might not feel comfortable with opening up at that time. So when you are having your one-on-one conversation, ask them, um, what do you need to feel included, or what do you need to involve yourself in those sessions as well, because I do believe that sometimes people are being put on the spot within a team session and they don't feel psychologically safe to address that. Also, a fan. I think a lot of people are going to buy your book after this. So, loving this
Oh,
interaction. Start reading Lucy's book, loving it so far. And I agree.
thank
I really
you.
like it. I really like it. And also, Jocelyn is saying, hi, Jocelyn. Yes, yes, yes. We need cultural intelligent data for AI. My new mission with my startup based in Canada. Love this conversation, and thank you, Lucy and Vivian. Thank you, Jocelyn, for sharing that. A lot of
That
love
sounds
during this conversation.
like a fascinating startup, Jocelyn.
Yeah. So, I have two questions for you. What are your thoughts on the potential for organizations to become culturally intelligent, and what challenges might they face?
So I think scale is one thing to think about. What is the scale of your
Yeah.
organization? Because that creates a very different aspect of to how you may go about it and how many different complex scenarios is it operating
Hmm.
in, for example.
Yeah.
For organizations, absolutely needs leaders that are on board. And I would also say the dream is not to have a culturally intelligent organization. The
Hmm.
dream is that we're using cultural intelligence in order to be an
Hmm.
inclusive, an organization where everyone
Yeah.
thrives, a profitable and innovative. You know,
To
what are the
win,
words?
to become competitive, right? In the end, that's what they want. They want more money, more revenue, more clients. So all these are elements where CQ can be a game changer, can play a
Abs-
competitive role in that.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think buy-in from leadership and what are we
Mhm.
aiming for? So that vision piece that Sanders spoke about earlier,
Yeah.
to have the two and drive them kind of together. And
Mhm.
then there's something about looking, so what are the systems? What are the practices? What are the daily behaviors
Mhm.
that enable that? And often there's not a lot of self-awareness. There's a
Yeah.
language. So for example, I remember doing training with students and we were talking about things like this. And one of the students saying, I've worked with two mobile phone companies who both say that they're very customer centric, customer
Mhm.
focused.
Yeah.
And she says, and now that we're talking about this, I realize one was and one wasn't.
Yeah.
It's easy to have the languages and it's easy to turn away and not pay attention to the behaviors,
Mhm.
a bit like us talking about what the habits that go on round about. So sometimes the challenges can be the challenge of uncomfortably saying this bit has to change. And
Yeah.
if it's something about myself, that's even harder.
Mhm. Definitely. Definitely. Especially, training regarding personal change,
Mhm.
transformation, because it's the individual that needs to change. But then again, um, organizations want teams to tap into their high performance. Leaders want their teams to do that as well. And not having CQ within the foundation, it will be a challenge to achieve that, and also a challenge for people to reflect and do what's needed to do to work towards building effective collaborative teams or effective communication, because there's so much laying in the undercurrent that's not spoken, but yet everybody's expecting a lot and everybody has something to say, or everybody's labeling each other whilst not having a conversation about what is in the undercurrent, what is within me, and how do I fit within this team.
Absolutely. Yeah, that bit about the foundation, and there's so much research as well for people who
Hmm.
like to hear that For example,
Yeah.
the more diversity, the more breakdown there can be in trust
Yeah.
and understanding.
Yeah.
But they've seen that if you build in cultural intelligence, it improves psychological safety, the
Hmm.
ability to share ideas, trust building, all these
Hmm.
things that are so important to getting things done, and
Yeah.
crucially to responding when there's elements that are far from ideal, because it's not just what happens in the company, it's what happens in the outside. The context changes,
Hmm.
and it can create a lot of uncertainty and difficulty with people. And if you have high performing, high trust teams, they can respond to that
Yeah.
in a
You notice what
meaningful
happened
way.
during the lockdown, right? You
Mhm.
notice companies that still did well, or teams that were doing well, and teams that were not doing well were being shared on TikTok or being disclosed. And also, what reminds me of what you were saying right now is the layoff period. I think it was 2023 or 2024 or 2022, where there were these big tech companies that were doing layoffs, and there was one company that really did a humanized way of firing people, and that was Stripe. The way that they were setting people up for success, even though, the CEO admitted that they made a mistake and they really, were bummed about it. But I know we have to let you go, but before we let you go, at least we are going to provide you a 6-month visa. We are going to give you access to training resources. We are also going to give you this. And this was a whole letter of apology, but also setting people up for success. And this is something that so many people will remember, but also afterwards
Mhm.
will remember, because this is the way of, I understand that in economic times, you need to make certain decisions that you have to let people go. But the way you let people go, it's just like Maya Angelou says, like, people will not remember what you said or what you've done. They will remember how the way you made them feel. And that's how what I get when it comes to CQ is, how are you bring that, that quote from Maya Angelou, how you bring that into practice?
Absolutely. I love that quote.
Yeah. It's, let's say, the start of 2026, and I feel like I need to extend it to further, but I will only do this year. Next year I will extend it a little bit further, but 2030, what do you hope to see when it comes to humanizing the workplace and cultural intelligence in practice?
Mhm. It's interesting because I look ahead and my visions can be very different. So I'll focus on the positive visions at the moment,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I hope is, I'm aware when I first certified in cultural intelligence in 2013, in the UK, nobody had really heard of it.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think the Netherlands will be the same.
Yeah.
Um,
It's still unknown here.
Whereas now, emotional intelligence, and so I'm hopeful that people will understand, and I think our world will become ever more fluid and people on the move. That's not stopping. If
Mhm.
anything, it's going to keep rising. Um, and so I think there's a real need for us to be foundational. For me, cultural intelligence also helps us deal with change, and it can
Mhm.
help us to respond and
Yeah.
adapt to
Yeah.
change. And so I really see the importance for the continued practice
Mhm.
development and that wish that I started with, so that we can thrive and so that we can be proud of what we're contributing to.
I believe that as well. And Samar, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, because I know that cultural intelligence is here to stay. It can add so much value, not only on an individual level, on a team level, and from a leadership's perspective, where it can build and help people to train the, let's say the soft skills, even though soft skills are not the right word for it because it's hard to train those skills, but those skills are necessary to collaborate with different people. There are continents growing, like Asia is growing, Africa is growing. There are more people showing up, more people getting access to AI and to collaborating with other people from other continents. How will you leverage that? How will you use that to leverage your knowledge, but also to create connections? Whereas some people build are rather building relationships than going straight to the point and doing their negotiations, while other people are different like that. So when you know that of each other, and also when you know that when you move abroad or when you collaborate with somebody or end up in a new team as a new manager, set up a new team, there are all these elements are there where you can activate cultural intelligence. So I want to say thank you, a huge thank you to those who have been watching because you made it engaging, and thank you for your questions as well. And thank you, Lucy, for indulging us and for sharing your wisdom, but also empowering people with cultural intelligence and practice.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for inviting me, Vivian. I've really enjoyed it. And
Of
I've loved
course.
hearing from the people who have shared as well. That was
Yeah,
lovely.
thank
Felt
you.
the love.
Until next time, everybody. Bye.